Now, the pressure is rising for Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner as Stockport Council announces a review into suggestions the Labour deputy committed tax fraud. The council is looking into whether Rayner claimed the single person's council discount on the property while letting her brother live there.
Well, it comes as Greater Manchester Police said it was reassessing its decision not to investigate allegations Rayner avoided capital gains tax when she sold her former council house. She's also faced scrutiny over claims that in 2010 she may have lived primarily at her ex-husband's home, despite registering to vote under her own address, which could be a breach of electoral rules. Well, joining us now is the Telegraph columnist and parliamentary sketch writer Madeline Grant and the Independent's chief political commentator John Rentoul. Madeline, I'm going to start with you. I mean, on the surface of it, people can go, well, you know, she owned a house, her husband owned a house, which one did she live in? Or is it just a mistake of paperwork? A lot of people do this sort of thing. But actually, when you're a deputy leader of a political party and the sort of basket of crimes and wrongdoings that this could entail, it is quite serious.
Well, I think that the real problem is, you know, as you say, we're not potentially looking at a very large sum of money here if these allegations are true. But I think, as ever with these things, it's the handling of the issue and essentially the sense of a cover-up around it that has been the real problem. You know, I think that if Angela Rayner had said from the start, look, I made a mistake, I'm attempting to redress it, you know, people often fall foul of our tax system is notoriously complex. I mean, I have to hire an accountant just to do the tax return on the small amount of money that I make on top of my overall salary because it's so complicated. I think people would understand that, but there's been a real lack of reticence about this, about the issue of the house in Stockport. And there are also big allegations of hypocrisy here because, you know, Angela Rayner has previously been someone who's called for maximum transparency, called for people to resign for having fallen foul of tax rules, for example. So she said that during the Hartlepool by-election, she said that the Tory candidate Jill Mortimer, she insinuated that she had links to Cayman Islands tax avoidance schemes and demanded that Mortimer publish her tax return, even though that she was just a lowly backbencher at the time. And of course, Keir Starmer himself has said that his top three, which would be him and Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner, ought to publish their tax returns. So there's all this stuff, baggage from the past that is now coming to catch up with them. And I think, you know, if they had handled it differently, we wouldn't have to be in this place at all. The story would have gone away. And I think in a way it shows that sort of arrogance within the Labour Party right now. They clearly think that, you know, you can do the nothing to see here, folks, just ride it out because, you know, that's how well they're doing in the polls.
Let's bring you in, John. As I understand it, Angela Rayner says that she was only acting on proper legal advice about capital gains tax and maybe also potential electoral fraud, which is a much lesser allegation. A lot of people make that mistake. But in terms of her capital gains, she says she was given proper advice. So no one is actually asking her to publish her tax returns. What we're asking, or what many people, they're asking, show us that letter, that official advice you got about capital gains tax. Why doesn't she show us that?
No, well, as Madeline pointed out, she's promised to publish her tax return, or Keir Starmer's promised it on her behalf, and she will do. She'll no doubt do that. But this is something that happened, what is it, 15 years ago or something like that. But she, as you say, she says she has advice from either her lawyers or her tax advisors, not quite sure which satisfies her that she hasn't done anything wrong, but she won't show it to the rest of us. She's shown it to Keir Starmer's team, but not to Keir Starmer himself, and I think that's a bit awkward.
Yeah, I mean, how much of a headache, John, do you think this is going to be for Labour? Is it the sort of thing that the public just sort of, you know, goes over most people's heads? Or do you think people out there will have a sense of anger about this?
No, not much. I mean, you know, I love Angela Rayner. I think she's brilliant. I think she's a great asset to the Labour Party. But she really shouldn't be behaving in this hypocritical way. I mean, as Madeline said, she has called on various Tories at various times to be open and honest and to publish everything, and yet she's not following that herself. I think she'll get away with it because she's relatively popular and Labour are 20 points ahead in the polls. But I think it's a disgrace.
Well said, John. Madeline, I mean, she won't get away with it because if the police, who have said they're reassessing their decision not to investigate her, if they do investigate her and they find her guilty of this, of course, I must stress she denies any wrongdoing, but if they find her guilty of tax avoidance, then she's in big trouble, isn't she? And the Labour Party might have to dispense with her services going forward towards this election. I mean, she's in a bit of a mess, isn't she?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think it would become too much of a difficulty for Keir Starmer, popular as she is, if it were to be, there was some kind of official penalty given against her. But I just think that it's, that what it tells you about the way that the Labour Party are operating internally right now. It's not actually. I think the question isn't so much like, will it register with voters, and is it going to make that big of a difference? I don't think it's that big of an issue really, but it does tell you something important about how they are operating and what they feel they can get away with, because they're really riding so high at the moment. I think it's a bit, obviously this is nowhere near as serious as the fallout from the selection of the anti-Semitic candidate in Rochdale, but there again we had a situation where Labour were quite slow to react, and I think that their first instinct was to kind of go for damage control and hope you could ride it out, rather than dealing with the problem there and then. And of course, in doing so, it ended up being creating, quite the rod for their own backs there. So I think perhaps that's the more important thing. But yeah, I think you're right. I think if there was some official penalty, she would then be too much of a liability. Perhaps the questions just wouldn't stop.
Now, while we've still got you, Madeline, very quick question before we let you go. There have been some rumours knocking about that the Prime Minister could be forced into calling a general election this summer. Do you think that's likely, or do you think it will be autumn?
Oh, well, I don't know about those rumours, I'm afraid. I'm always a bit useless at these sorts of questions because I basically just kind of make fun of politics rather than sort of knowing all the internal gossip. But I think that my gut would be still October, November as before. I don't, with the polls as it is, it would take a very brave party to go to the polls any sooner than that, I think. And perhaps there is still the expectation that there may be some progress in areas, but we're currently in a technical recession. I don't think this would be a very good time for them to go to the polls, but that's just my hunch.
I'm not sure there's any good time for the Tories to go to the polls at the moment. John, last question to you. Do you think Angela will be making a big public thank you to Margaret Thatcher for profiting to the tune of more than £40,000 from Maggie's Right to Buy scheme? Do you think Angela might thank Maggie?
Well, no, I don't think she will. Surprisingly enough. I mean, she has said, to be fair to her, that she opposes the deep discounts that are currently on offer to right to buy tenants, 60% or something like that, which, and the proceeds cannot be reinvested in social housing. And she says that's wrong. But no, I think she takes a very pragmatic view, and I think that's one of the attractive things about her. Actually, she's prepared to praise Tony Blair even when she was being lauded by the Corbynistas. And I suspect she probably would have some nice things to say about Margaret Thatcher's record. I can't quite think that she could bring herself to say that the Right to Buy was an excellent idea.
I'll bet she can't. I mean, she's got herself in a murky situation, and it would benefit from the oxygen of transparency, and that's what she needs to do. Thank you very much to John Rentoul and to Madeline Grant.